everybody, and welcome to Life Changing Solutions Live. Angie Amico, your relationship architect. And one of the things I wanted to talk about today is, well, first of all, what I'm up to. And I've developed this awesome, what I think is awesome, group. It's going to be for women, and it's called Soul Warriors. A few weeks back, I had spoken into honoring, or actually a few seasons back, I want to say, I had spoken into honoring and identifying your lions, and just to get everybody kind of, back on track with that. Like, lately, one of my biggest pet peeves is when people use mental health terms to describe somebody. Oh, that person's narcissistic. Oh, that person's bipolar, or all this other stuff. And it just really gets under my skin, because although I'm glad that there's this huge awareness coming up about mental health, and it's eliminating and breaking down some of those barriers, it's creating a whole new set, right? And there's a big misconception. And that's one of the things that I'm about. It's about really breaking down those barriers and really having people understand what mental health is, right? And because think about it, if somebody's like, oh, you're depressed, they may not be, but because everybody's saying that they are, they may actually develop a depression over it. It's just really wonky the way that it works. But going back to honoring and identifying your lions, when we go through breakups, or we have, just really rocky relationships with our bosses, even with friends, we have the tendency to blame the other person, and even will label them and say, oh, you're toxic, even saying you're negative, right? And to the other extreme, saying, oh, you're a narcissist, or they're this. The reason I have an issue with that is because, as I mentioned, on the mental health side, narcissism is a whole other beast, right? And just because somebody's super confident doesn't make them a narcissist. But maybe what's really happening is that the combination of both of your personalities and who you are just doesn't work. So the relationship could be toxic, but not necessarily the other person. The other thing that happens too is that when you start to label that person such as toxic or negative, that on a wooey side thing and a vibrational thing, what are you doing? You're now passing judgment on them, and it's really you being toxic to them. So it just doesn't really work very well. And so what I say is, think of a lion. To me, a lion is a very magical, majestic, awesome creature, right? They're the king of the jungle, and they command respect. They, they're just these fascinating beasts that will bite your head off without question, for no other reason other than the fact that they were hungry or they just felt like it, right? So think about it, like if we were to go to a zoo and we put our hand in the cage and the lion bites our hand off, really whose fault is it, right? Is it our own for knowing that we're putting our hand in the cage, or is it the lion's? Most people would say it's you. So it's the same way with us. Everybody, I think, is capable of being a lion. Super awesome, majestic, regal. We all have our great sides to us. And then we also have the not so great, right? And so when you take that and mix it with somebody else, you may clash. But it doesn't necessarily mean that that other person is toxic or that you are toxic. And when you have identified a true lion, somebody that's going to bite your head off at any moment for no reason other than the fact that that's who they are, by you accepting that that's who they are, for one, it allows them to be who they get to be. You're not trying to change them. You're not trying to control them. And also, it gives you a sense of power and awareness, because now you know that they're capable of doing this kind of thing. So then it allows you not necessarily to be on the defensive or even on the offensive. It's just, you're not going to take it so personal when they do try to nip at your fingers, when they do, start roaring and, getting all pissed off. You already know this, and so you're prepared for it, and you don't give your power away. You just say, okay, you're being a lion right now, see you later. And Nobody there is being offended. Nobody is trying to control the other or manipulate the other. And so if we did that, we would really, more often, we would really be able to come together and accept one another for who we are, and our relationships would really, really change. So I really invite everybody to consider that and take a moment to think about that, right? Because, I mean, and it happens with our parents, like, oh my gosh, my mom is always harping on me. Well, maybe that's just her sucky way of saying I love you, right? And there's still something awesome about what she's trying to say. Maybe her approach is not the greatest, or maybe the way she's saying it is not the greatest, but nonetheless, she's trying to love you in her way, right? And as much as we may not like it, it's still a way of us accepting and being able to sift through what works and doesn't work for us, versus just simply, cutting all ties and pointing that finger and saying, oh, that person's toxic, that person's negative. It's like we all have our moments, even you. I'm sorry to say, I know everybody thinks they're awesome, I know everybody thinks they're the greatest, but we have our sucky moments too. It's like, I know I definitely do. But that actually, that's like the short version of what honoring the lion is. And that brought me to soul warriors. Because when I was doing research for this, somebody said to me, well, what about in the case of abuse? What about in the case of, and I mentioned narcissists, right? When somebody's been in a narcissistic relationship, the damage is real, it's severe, and it's more than just saying you suck. It is a real issue. And I didn't want to minimize that. As I mentioned, I speak into reframing the everyday stuff. And that's why I say, and I'm so adamant about uncollapsing what a mental health condition is versus just somebody having a personality, clash. And so with Soul Warriors, that is a group for women that it's meant to empower one another who've actually have endured some severe trauma and severe abuse by somebody who is a true narcissist. That damage, like when somebody, thanks Danny, hi guys, sorry I just saw all these messages pop up. When somebody has been through an abusive relationship, you guys know I've had people come in and talk about domestic violence and other things. This is completely separate, as I mentioned. This is a real thing, and I'm gonna keep it in the women's world, right? Not to say that men are not abused, not to say that men do not go through this, but the focus for me right now is going to be for women. And what generally happens when somebody's been in a relationship like this, the victim walks away filled with so much shame, so much guilt. It's like they continue to victimize themselves even after they've left the relationship. So the damage is very profound, and the recovery process is a long one. It's a journey in and of itself. And one of the biggest things that happens, as I mentioned, there's a shame that comes with it. There's an embarrassment, not just because of saying this happened to me, but sometimes certain things happen within the relationship that you're embarrassed to even say. You're like, I can't believe, I ended up doing this, he forced me to, sleep with his friends or something, because that does happen, right? And we're so ashamed of some of the things that we've done, because that's part of the way the dynamic works, is you're being manipulated, and it's like almost like you're under this spell that when you wake up from it, you're like, wow, I can't believe I did this. And so that is just one of many things that happens to someone who's been in a relationship like this. So I'm super excited to announce Soul Warriors. I just barely launched it. All the details will be coming out soon in June. And I really hope that everybody can join me. Thanks, Daniel. Hi, Deborah. Sorry. Thanks, everybody, for joining me. So that's what I'm up to right now. Coming up on the show, we're going to have Beth Marshall. She's going to be guiding us through our Living with Spirit. And I'm sorry, I always butcher the name, but I love you, Beth. And then afterwards, we're going to have an awesome guest, Greg. And we're going to talk about how to get over some of the fears of public speaking. So stay tuned.